The voice of sharing. Durian ASEAN.
Hello, how are you guys doing today?
We are back again with more news from the ASEAN Breakfast Call. And you're listening to Durian ASEAN, the voice of discovery and sharing.
And yo, it's Gowri and Arlene. Okay, that rhymed.
Really? It sounds
Kind
so.
of.
So today, we have a couple of really interesting news that we are going to share today.
Yeah, it's a beautiful Monday morning. Hopefully, we have some good news to share with our listeners.
That's true. By the way, how was your weekend? Because my weekend was packed with a lot of activities. It was so tiring. In fact, this morning I think I need a huge dose of coffee to awaken my senses.
I didn't have a packed weekend, but I did have a paper to write, so most of my weekend was taken up by that paper.
So you need to be a bit of a book nerd during the weekends.
Yeah.
So, our news today. Let's start off from Brunei, the Brunei Times. The headline is "Code to prioritize breastfeeding underway." So the news is a new health workers code is being drafted by the Maternal, Infant and Young Child Nutrition (MYCN) Task Force. The code seeks to only encourage breastfeeding and refuse any inducement from formula milk companies.
Yeah, so among the regulations outlined in the code is that health workers must refrain from accepting subsidiaries from milk companies and refuse free samples of formula milk and other products such as teats and bottles from manufacturers and distributors. I think this code also calls for all the manufacturers and distributors to only share scientific and factual information to the health workers without implying that bottle feeding is superior to breastfeeding. I don't know what's wrong with my pronunciation today.
Breastfeeding. So, according to one of the secretariats for the task force, the drafting of the health workers code is part of the initiative done by the Ministry of Health to adapt the International Code of Breast Milk Substitutes into the country. So this is I think it's a pretty positive thing to draft something like a breastfeeding code.
Yeah, that's right, because I guess a lot of people in Brunei are not aware that breastfeeding is actually a lot healthier for the baby compared to using formula. So I guess it's good that the government is coming up with this campaign to raise the awareness among the mothers.
Mm-hmm. And I think, personally, I was breastfeeded when I was a child growing up. I felt that it is something that it's not just about the nutrition value of the breast milk, but also the bonding between the mother and the child. I think a child would feel much more closer to the mother if the mother constantly breastfeeding.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't really know how to respond to that because I don't know if my relationship with my mother is actually affected by whether how often
by the
she
breast milk.
breastfed me. Yeah. Because I did have a younger sister right after me, so I guess she probably got more attention than I did, or something.
This is in the Brunei context, but if you put it in the Malaysian context, formula milk is extremely expensive, and I think a lot of low income family, I don't think they can afford it. And by encouraging breastfeeding, I think at the same time, for the long term, it's not just about encouraging breastfeeding, but also encouraging for the mother to have a much more healthier lifestyle.
So right, and also to cut down on the cost in a way. And it actually breastfeeding is
you have to pronounce that a bit more.
Breastfeeding is not only good for the baby, it's also good for the mother in a lot of ways. As I read in an article, it actually reduces the risk of breast cancer for the mom.
Oh yeah, I read that as well. And I think it is a two-way thing. It's good for the mom and it's good for the child as well. In fact, it's written here, the International Code of Breast Milk Substitutes was set up by the World Health Organization in 1981 to protect and promote breastfeeding through the dissemination of proper information and regulation of the marketing of breast milk substitutes, bottles, and tests. And I think this is good. I mean, on the other hand, you have the benefits of breastfeeding between mom and child and the bonding between the mother and the child. But at the same time, when it comes to the formula itself, the breast milk substitutes, it seems like it is questionable, in terms of how the company conduct itself. I mean, there are questions that the bottles itself contains elements that is harmful to the baby, and also in terms of the formula itself, they use like cheaper products to substitutes rather than like real like cow milk or something like that.
And there could be substances in the formula milk that the baby actually cannot digest, that it's not in the system yet. So whereas if it's the mother's milk, it already has actually all the suitable nutrients that the baby can digest immediately without any problem.
So talking about Brunei again, as reported by the Brunei Times, another story is Brunei is to host the Asia Pacific Defense Chief Conference, and Brunei is slated to host the Asia Pacific Chiefs of Defense Conference, or CHOD, this year, bringing together top military officials with the aims of bolstering regional trust.
So I guess the defense minister and the supreme commander said that organizing the forum will serve as another step in the RBAF's efforts towards building regional military cooperation. And this was initiated in 1998, where the CHOD has been conducted every year as a platform for nurturing trust among the countries in the region and enhancing security ties through the exchange of opinions and on regional security and bilateral dialogues.
I think this is very interesting in terms of having a defense chief conference. This is the first time I ever heard about it. But it stated that Asia Pacific, so I would assume it's more than just Southeast Asia.
Right, that's right.
Yeah.
And do you think this could have happened in the midst of this crisis that we're having with China? Maybe
it could be
that Brunei is stepping up its security measures as well.
It could be getting not just the trust and and also strengthening the bonds between Southeast Asia countries, but also Asia Pacific in a larger sense. I mean, we have to commend that Australia and New Zealand have one of the best military defense, and in fact, at one point in Malaysia's history, they were part of the group. They were part of the military forces, as in like the Commonwealth group, to assist Malaysia in terms of the security and defense. So I think it's a great thing that we have this regional security and bilateral dialogues between countries in Asia Pacific. And I think having a stronger regional understanding and trust is much more important, especially like you said just now, China is being offensive and invading the South China Sea. And I don't think there's any dialogue happening at this moment in terms of trying to resolve the issue.
Yeah, so that's why it's good for Brunei that they're hosting this dialogue, because it's always better to try and solve things through dialogues first before bringing in military or resorting to any sort of violence.
But I felt that the interesting part is why Brunei, why not other countries? I mean, the Philippines have a very strong U.S. military base, and Malaysia, we keep on purchasing a lot of military equipments and submarines. And also, I think Singapore have one of the best in terms of military preparations with the army and also their equipment, military equipments.
It could also be because of the Sharia law that they implemented. Maybe they feel a little threatened that
who will be threatening them? They are doing this for their own citizens.
Well, I know, but it's violating the human rights, as we all know, and a lot of countries, especially the United States, is not happy with this. So maybe in a way they feel intimidated or threatened. by
Well,
other countries.
I guess so, but I think in a way it could be like two separate different things. Well, for talking about Sharia law, I think another country that is thinking of implementing Sharia law would be Malaysia, but
It's us, yeah.
it is us. But we are not going to touch on Sharia law. We're going to touch on the politics, the recent political development in Malaysia. So what's the news?
Well, this is a very hot news that actually happened over the weekend. The loss of Diana Sofia at the by-elections of Teluk Intan. So it seems that Lim Guan Eng has actually narrowed it down to race and age, her race and age that stood in the way of DAP's new politics. So they were, Lim Guan Eng and Lim Kit Siang were both disappointed when she lost. They gambled on Diana Sofia to keep Teluk Intan federal seat, but the political unknown lost by 238 votes to
It's a
Gerakan
very close
president.
one.
It is. It was a very close
Imagining
one.
you have like thousands and thousands, like probably 50,000s of.
I think I have the numbers here. DAP was 19,919 votes, and BN was 20,157.
Plus a couple of spoiled votes
Yeah,
as well.
exactly.
So probably you have around 50,000 plus or minus.
Well, it was a very thin margin. It was not like a major difference between the two. It was
Yeah.
a very, very close fight.
The margin is not even like one area of margin. It's like probably one kampong of margin. I would say one village of margin.
So the 27 lawyer who is Diana Sofia, she became the darling of the cyberspace citizens, but had to rely on DAP entirely to get support from local voters rather than for her personal charisma. But Lim Guan Eng also had this theory that they would have won if the outstation voters came back.
So in this new politics of the future, the old politics of race will be replaced by the politics of Malaysian nationalism based on issues of justice, freedom, accountability, and good governance. So that is the aspiration of Lim Kit Siang when he was commenting on this by-election. What do you think of this? I think it's a very interesting election, having a very young candidate, Diana Sofia, and someone who is much more veteran, and someone who is from Gerakan, who used to be the opposition party back in the 60s. But now, of course, they are part of the Barisan Nasional.
I think a lot of the word was that she was too young, and they thought she was inexperienced and that she cannot carry out the work that she claims that she can do.
I see. But the interesting part about the media as well when covering the news, it seems like there were virtually no news of Datuk Mah himself. I mean, I look the news every day, and every day is during the campaigning period itself. It was about Diana Sofia, whether she was going somewhere, she was doing this, her personality, what she studied, what she did as a living, her mother's involvement with Perkasa. But I have no idea what Datuk Mah himself.
Yeah, especially
as a
online,
person.
there wasn't much information available on his campaign, on his manifesto. It only probably came out like a week before the elections, whereas news on Diana was out for quite some time.
Yeah.
So I was reading this comment by Khairi Jamaluddin. He said, did you read that one?
I haven't read that one yet.
It was actually on Twitter. He said that BN chose a candidate for Teluk Intan and DAP chose a candidate for Bangsa. And that's why they lost. And at first I didn't get it. I was like, Bangsa? What do you mean? And then I understood what he meant. So I guess he does have a point there. Maybe the people in Teluk Intan are not ready for someone as young and, how do I say it, as charismatic as Diana. Probably they wanted someone who was older, that
familiar.
Yeah, that they can relate to, you know, someone much more mature. So I thought he had a pretty good point there, although he was very sarcastic about it.
You're actually very correct. I mean, I think it's also about the urban and rural divide. It's like in the urban area, a lot of progressive ideas have already penetrated. Like a lot of people would be able to accept like certain things that is not familiar, like having a Malay candidate to be to be contesting in majority non-Malay areas. That would be totally unheard of during the Mahathir era or in the previous era as well. So, I mean, I think the people of Teluk Intan, they want someone who can like care about their local issue,
that's about it.
not so much on like the national.
Reforms, a lot of modernization. They just want to continue what they have and to ensure that nothing goes wrong, nothing goes out of control.
Like people would, I think back in the mind of people Teluk Intan would be like, I don't know much about education policy or economic policy. What I care is the longkang or the sewage,
Right.
or the drainage in front of my house. Is it like fixed or not?
That's right. But he did guarantee free Wi-Fi, I think, for Teluk Intan. So they're going to get that.
Yeah, I hope so. They are going to get that. But I think it is. I don't think it's fair to say that the people of Teluk Intan is not prepared yet for someone young like Diana Sofia and someone who has a more progressive politics, I would say. I mean, you look at the split between the BN and DAP is like almost 50-50, except that for that 200 votes, you know. So I guess the views are divided. What do you think?
Yeah, that could be a possibility as well. So let's move on to Indonesia now. There's been an eruption of a volcano at the Sangyang Api grounds. So the flights have been cancelled across Indonesia and Australia due to this eruption. The ash continued from explosions at the Indonesian volcano has halted flights across a swath of cities in the region, including much of Bali and south to Darwin in Indonesia. In Australia. So no deaths have been reported from this eruption, but there have been reports that 14 people are missing, and over 3,000 people were evacuated from the region. So
and the reports from the people living near the volcano say the ash is falling outwards from 45 kilometers from Sangyang Api, disrupting businesses across much of the Sumbawa coast. Beyond this, the eruption has been about as benign as a large explosive eruption could be. And
so, I guess those of you who are traveling to Indonesia or even Australia, you should check out the latest reports on the volcano and since a lot of flights have been cancelled due to the ash traveling that far up to obstruct the view of the planes. So it might be safer not to travel until everything clears out.
Have you seen like a post volcano eruption before? Like how the situation is?
I've seen on TV, not in person.
Well, I happened to been to Jogja like a couple of years back. The place is called Gunung Merapi Mountain. At that time, it was a year back or a couple of months back. The volcano erupted, and the ashes of the volcano covered probably like a huge radius of the mountain itself. And I happened to go there, like climbing up to the mountain, and it was like a post-war situation, like
with the smoke
scene.
and everything.
Yeah, and with the dead tree, it's like the whole place has been like atomic bomb.
Situation.
Yeah, I mean it's very surreal. I mean the amount of destruction is huge. So that's, I mean, to me personally, this is something that is awe-inspiring, and at the same time, it's like, wow. I mean, human life is like so small that we could have been crumbled under these ashes, you know.
Still bad we don't have volcanoes here, though.
Yeah, we are actually quite safe.
So let's move on. Still in Indonesia, actually. Gareth Bale mocked by fans in Indonesia after Real Madrid's Champions League triumph. So Real Madrid's midfielder Gareth Bale wooed hundreds of Indonesian fans on Sunday in a personal promotional tour of Jakarta at the back of his team's Champions League glory. And the fans cheered wildly as the Welshman kicked the ball from the stage into a crowd of 1,000 people at the massive Gelora Bung Karno Sports Stadium in the Indonesian capital.
Okay, you got me. I have no idea about football.
I know. Well,
I have no idea what's happening.
Well, you're lucky because Real Madrid is my favorite team, so I'm gonna take this one. So, as we all know, Real Madrid recently beat Atletico Madrid. You're just nodding. To win the Champions League. This is their 10th win. We have actually been trying for so many.
What is your nationality?
Yeah, I'm suddenly a Madridista
I think
now.
Lee Kin Siang will be so disappointed on you. He wanted to have a Malaysian nationalism.
Yeah. Well, okay, so we beat Atletico Madrid and finally won our 10th Champions League title. I'm getting all riled up now. So Gareth Bale decided that he would visit Indonesia for some reason. He didn't come to Malaysia, so I can see him. And he had a football coaching clinic for the young people over there. And he also had a speech at this Gelora Bung Karno Sports Stadium.
Yeah, I've been there before.
Oh, okay.
Very interesting.
For?
2 years. I think it was 4 years back. It was a youth event that I attended.
So he also said, hopefully a lot of young people in the crowd here today can work hard, practice football, and be a professional one day. And Bale is enjoying a boost to his fame following Real Madrid's win in Saturday's Champions League final, which he scored a crucial goal in extra time to defeat Atletico Madrid. So it's actually Gareth Bale's first season in Real Madrid. Before this, he was in Man City and they bought him.
Mm-hmm.
And they kicked out Mesut Ozil to Arsenal. So he had a pretty good season, I think. And let's move on so you don't give me that awkward face.
But I'm quite interested that when you say that Gareth Bale is mobbed by fans, is he hurt by that, or he was just like swarmed over by fans?
Swarmed because they are so. He's like one of the biggest sports icon right now. Ever since he went to Real Madrid, he just shot to fame and became like the next big thing in the football scene. So I guess
he's the Ling Chong Wei of the
football
world.
Probably, yeah.
Okay, let's move on to something that I'm more familiar.
Okay.
So the World Post reported that under Thailand's military rule, protesters pick up books to defy coup. This is pretty interesting. I was scrolling through social media, and I read about this piece of news, and some of my Thai friends also tweeted about it. Facebook about this as well. And since in Thailand you cannot gather more than 5 people,
Yeah, that's right.
So what they did was they gather less than 5 people, probably 4, and they start to read to resist or to defy the military coup. And I think this is pretty interesting because reading is not seen as something that is offensive. It's not even seen as something that what you would assume a protest would be. So I think the protesters are being very smart in their move.
Yeah, and they're actually reading George Orwell's 1984.
Oh my God,
and,
we should cover that in our future.
Yeah, I think we were gonna do Animal Farm at some point later this month. So 1984 is actually about how this whole country is being watched by this one guy, the Big Brother, that he has surveillance cameras everywhere. And I think that's pretty much what Thailand is going through right now with the military almost controlling every aspect of their lives, from media to the roads to the economy and everything. So it's probably they can relate to it, and they also know probably how it's gonna eventually end.
I'm really inspired by them because I think in a junta-ruled Thailand, the simple act of reading in public has become an act of resistance, and I think that's a really creative resistance towards authorities.
Yeah, because they are not allowed to gather, like you said earlier, but at the same time they are angry about the coup, and they want to express their dissatisfaction, but they don't know how else to do it. So then they came up with reading, especially reading George Orwell. We know that he writes all these controversial books that did not even actually get published at his time because he was way ahead of his time, and he's quite forward about it in a way. But
yeah, that's true. In fact, in a country where, in the context of Thailand, in a country where the army has vowed to crack down on anti-coup protesters demanding elections and a return to civilian rule, in a place where you can actually be detained by for simply holding something that said peace please in the wrong part of the town. In fact, there's this one news, a lady, she just what do you call this, like just put the three finger
I read
thingy,
about that.
like she just raised her hand and raised her three fingers, and she was immediately being catched by the military,
The police,
the police.
I read.
And that's scary. I mean, it can mean anything. Doesn't mean you are a supporter of something, right?
But like we know in Thailand, you have to pick a side. You're not allowed to be neutral, and the most important thing there is actually your political views.
Seems like under the coup, under the military rule, the situation has become much, much worse than during the political crisis.
With Yingluck Shinawatra.
Yeah. And in fact, a human rights activist stated that people are angry about the coup, but they can't express it. And I think it will build up in even larger anger under there. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I think that a lot of people are unhappy, and because they don't have a channel to express it, and
they go and read.
Yeah, reading is a good way, but I guess eventually they will have to find probably a much stronger medium to get the message across.
Yeah. But I think it's great that they are reading. At least how much of our young people here actually read?
Oh, that's another big story. So there's an interesting news about Boko Haram again, which is pretty shocking because by now we would have thought that the Nigerian government would have done something about them, but no. There's been another series of attacks in 4 villages in Nigeria's restive northeast, killed several people in the latest violence blamed on the Islamist insurgents. So the military was not immediately available to comment, but this is actually the hardest hit area during the Boko Haram's 5-year extremist uprising, which has killed thousands of people.
And they burned all the villages and took away all the livestock. It was stated by the Gowri resident Buru Kaloma, providing details reported by other witnesses as well.
And they also said that 15 people were killed in the attacks, but there were conflicting reports, and it was not possible to establish a concrete death toll.
Yeah, it's quite, I would say, amazing, horrible. I mean, because the issue in Nigeria has not been highlighted well, only recently during the adoption of that 200 girls. But Boko Haram has been fighting Nigeria's government to create an Islamic State in the north since 2009.
Yeah, exactly.
And it hasn't been covered by any mass media as far as I know. Even if it was covered, it was just like, it wasn't like a huge campaign against this group of extremists. But the conflict have received unprecedented global attention over the last 6 years, all because of that 200 girls adopted.
It only started in the last 6 weeks when the 200 girls got abducted, and now these villages are being attacked. And I think that it's either the government should do something about it, or if they need help, they should speak up, try and get other countries in. But I think even their government, the neighboring countries are not being very helpful at this point.
I think regional solidarity is more important right now than even international help, because UN is very bureaucratic when it comes to like this kind of situation, and other countries usually they would have this wait and see kind of situation. So I think regional cooperation and solidarity is very important. So that's all from today.
Yeah, that's all at the time that we have for today.
Yeah, we will continue again with more news for Blast from the Grassroots. Stay tuned.